All right. Well, on to the history of database health monitor. So we often get asked about where this started or what we did to build this. And database health monitor is one of those things that we bring into every client engagement to help with what we're doing there to save time and to make it so our clients don't have to go and buy another product for us to use in order to help track their databases. But where it started in 2011, I was working as a consultant at a company, and one of the guys I worked with, we'll just call him Wayne because that was his name. And Wayne is all into SSRS at this point in time. And SSRS came out in 2008, so it was still, I think, fairly new. But I had this pile of queries, we'll call it a bag of queries that I would bring in, that when I was working on analyzing a SQL server, my process would be when a load test was run or when things were having problems, I'd open up a set of queries. I'd have to find the right SQL file, open it up, run it, and then show however glamorous it was in SQL Server Management Studio at that point in time, which, by the way, Management Studio has evolved a lot since then. But Wayne says to me, he says, all these queries you're running to show what's going on with the SQL Server would be really interesting if you put them into SSRS and took advantage of some of the things in SSRS as far as displaying queries. So I started working on that in 2011, and by 2012, I was presenting at SQL Saturday in Vancouver, BC, a on what I had built to start with. So let me just show some slides. This is my slide deck from 2012, and I think it was middle of March in 2012. And I didn't even call it Database Health Monitor at this point. It was just using SSRS reports to analyze SQL Server health. And anyway, so I talk about it at that point as a project that I started last year. Well, that was 2011. It started out as 2 reports, and it's grown to a series of 10 reports. And I plan to add 5 more reports into the project over the next several months. Well, that didn't quite happen that way because I quickly outgrew what I felt comfortable doing in SSRS. But this is what the first version of Database Health Monitor looked like. It was a SSRS report that you would open and view through a browser or your SSRS development environment. And it had about 10 report links across the top. You'd put in the server you're accessing, you'd choose the report, you'd click a button, and then you'd have to go view that report. You'd click on each one of the different reports there, pick what database you're using with a drop down, and it was exciting, the stuff we could do with SSRS back then. And there were some things that were kind of cool, like they had some cool visualizations on some of the data. And this was the original overview panel for the server overview, which we now have in Database Health Monitor, which is a whole lot different than this. And we had things like one-time use queries, which that report is still in Database Health Monitor, although it's using different components to display it today. And other things like backup sets. How big are our backups? Well, we have a report very similar to, very similar to this, but it's more of a grid rather than a chart. We also have charts in this today. This is the one that we have backup growth over time. We have a very similar report to this too as well, but I think it's a lot better because we include things like full diff and logs. And then some CPU charts, CPU load over time. I mean, this was all just being accessed through SQL Server SSRS reports. And so my plan at this point, when I debuted it at Vancouver SQL Saturday in 2012, was that I was going to expand this. I was going to make it easy for everyone to download these SSRS reports and use them to track and monitor their SQL Server. Well, it didn't quite work that way because I did the demo. I made it all available. A few people downloaded it, and then they were having trouble getting it to work. Oh, I want to use this, but I don't have SSRS. Or my administrator won't let me download third-party reports into SSRS or things like that. So that's where, and we'll just hit remove here. And that's where I threw out the SSRS reports after what I considered that initial beta release. And through 2012, late 2012 through 2014 and on, that's where I converted it over to a WinForm standalone desktop application. And then from 2014 through 2022, I just continued to add features and grow it as a standalone application. It was free, completely free as a beta. And then in 2021, we added online classes, and that was the first time we started charging for it. And then in 2022, that's where there's a lot of people starting to use it, and we realized that we needed to make some money off this in order to be able to support it because we spent a whole lot of time on it. And we added paid licensing and gamification where you could do a bunch of things, different things like a blog post or join a mailing list, and you get free points to access the system. But then that evolved, and 2023 and 2024, I guess 2023, we continued to add new features, and 2 developers were added to the project. Welcome, Mitchell. Welcome, George. Now, technically, George had worked on this a little bit earlier. I When he was in college, I had given him a couple of tasks where he was going to go work and do some things in database health monitor, and he added a couple features back prior to 2020, I guess it was. I don't remember the exact dates on that, George. But
Yeah, that would have been 2019 or 2020.
yeah. Anyway, so that brings us to kind of 2020, 2022 and on, where we started adding quite a few features. And with 3 people working on it rather than just me, there was a whole lot more going on in the product at that point.
Thanks for watching. I'm Steve, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you like it, please click the thumbs up icon. And if you want to subscribe, click subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to get notified when we have new videos. All right, have a great day.